Hello, everyone. My name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion is another one of the Disney movies based off of a ride at the theme parks. You got Pirates of the Caribbean, the original Haunted Mansion. This isn't a sequel. This is kind of a reimagining, a reboot, I guess, if you will. Something like Tomorrowland, Jungle Cruise. So they've done this before. And like I said, they're giving Haunted Mansion another shot. Now, I absolutely love the Haunted Mansion ride. I love Disney World. First time I ever went to Disney World was on my honeymoon, and we went back a little bit later, and we're planning another trip sometime in the future. I can't wait to go back. I love Disney World, and I love the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. The trailers didn't really do a ton for me, but it was interesting enough that I was excited for it. But before I go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. So jumping straight into the review, I think that this is a solid movie. It's not going to be for everybody. I can already tell you that. I can recognize that. Even though I'd say it's a solid movie, even though I did enjoy my time with it at the theater, I absolutely know it will not be for everybody. There's some movies where you just kind of think like, oh, wow, I can't believe you don't like that. Like if somebody were to tell me that they did not like Across the Spider-Verse or the new Mission Impossible, like I'd be like, wow, really? I can't believe you don't like that. That's not one of these films. I mean, of course, I know all films subjective, so it's just opinion, but still, I completely understand if this movie does not hit you in the right way. However, I will say I do think that the good does outweigh the bad here. Honestly, I think this is a pretty good, like, baby's first horror movie kind of thing. It's a good movie to kind of introduce kids to the world of horror movies, spooky movies, things like that. I mean, I had some pretty good scares in this film, and those a few times where like it gave me chills. It was pretty effective. There was one of the parts in the movie where my wife jumped super hard, but I think it was a good balance of kind of like the Disney fun with a little bit of spooky and some humor. Although I will say, I do wish that they could have leaned a little bit more into the horror from the very beginning. Although I do wish they leaned a little bit more into the horror, still keeping it family friendly, but they still could have leaned into it a little bit more because they kind of set a tone pretty close right at the beginning of the film, and it doesn't quite keep up that level the rest of the film. I wish they leaned into a little bit more of like the classic horror filmmaking techniques. There's a few shots here and there that they do that I really enjoy, but I wish, again, they did a little bit more kind of leaning into some of those filmmaking techniques. Another thing kind of with the ghosts and everything, I wish they could have done a little bit more of some of this stuff practically. You can tell that it's CGI. You can tell a lot of it is the CGI, and it's not bad. I'm not saying you can tell because it's bad. The CGI, in fact, is actually very, very good in this for the most part. I don't have any issues with it, really, but it would have been nice to see more done practically. And obviously, some practical things can be done because there's a lot of practical effects throughout the ride. I think the setting of this film was really cool. It was set in New Orleans, but I really don't think they utilized that setting enough. And kind of like what I mentioned with me hoping that they leaned in a little bit to some of the more classic horror movie film techniques, I think that the directing was a little bit more standard than kind of I was hoping for. You would see some shots or some sequences that were pretty cool, pretty unique, but it doesn't really carry through the whole film. And one thing I do think that they needed to build tension a little bit better. There was a few times where it was built really well, but there's a few times where I could just tell. I was sitting in the theater and I was like, they shouldn't have paid it off this early. They should have let it build and build. And honestly, I love the references to the ride in this movie. Of course, you got to have references to the ride. And I think they do it in a really good way. It's not something that takes you out of the movie. I feel like the script was okay. The first two acts were a lot stronger than the third act. I think the third act kind of falls apart a little bit. Sometimes the film can feel a little bit bloated. It's a little bit too long, especially some of the bloat comes in the third act. And I feel like they could have adjusted the script to make this shorter. I think everything that they have in the movie is relatively important for the experience they gave us, but I think it could have used some rewrites, maybe taken about 15 to 20 minutes out of it. However, I really, really like everything that they had going on with the Keith Stanfield character. The way that they kind of wrote the story around him, his character's backstory, just his character, I really liked it. And there were some really well done moments. I mean, there's some really good scenes with some really good emotion. And some of that is the writing, but some of it really is the performances as well. And I really loved how they were able to tackle the theme of grief in this, and not necessarily something I was expecting, but it worked really well. And honestly, it resonated with me. And I think they were pretty successful in tackling a pretty tough concept. Like I said, a third act is one of the bigger weak points here with the script. I just feel like there's one character who maybe makes a decision that literally like 2 minutes ago, he helped the character avoid a similar decision. It just didn't really feel right to me. This still has, the classic like Disney style, the charm, humor kind of aspect. And I would say most of the jokes worked, although there were probably a higher percentage of jokes that didn't work for me than I would have liked. There's a lot of jokes that kind of deal with, I guess, brands, and I wouldn't really call it product placement, but like just mentioning brands in general. There's a few jokes like, oh, Spirit, write this down on this notepad and pen I got from CVS, or, oh, I forgot to cancel my Amazon subscription, so I'm getting these Yankee candles, like things like that. That it was weird at first, and then the more it happened, which maybe it didn't happen a ton, but to me, it felt like it happened a lot through this film. And the more it happened, the more it would pull me out. But a lot of the jokes that did work for me worked because of the cast. And speaking of the cast, that's a perfect segue to talking about what I think is the best part of this film, and that is Lakeith Stanfield. I am so glad that he is the lead of this film. He brings so much heart and emotion to this role, and he was just really, really good in this. So much of this movie works because of Lakeith Stanfield. I mean, there was one scene where he was kind of delivering a monologue, and it almost made me tear up. Like, it was so well performed, and he brings such a likability and depth to this character. And honestly, if he wasn't here doing what he was doing, there would be a lot fewer good things I could say about this film. But he is absolutely MVP of this movie. Owen Wilson was really good in this. I like Owen Wilson in basically everything. He kind of has that charm as well. I really liked his character in this. I liked the chemistry that he and Lakeith Stanfield had, and I think it was a very welcomed addition to this cast. One thing I will say that maybe was a little bit disappointing is that Rosario Dawson's character, if it wasn't played by Rosario Dawson, it would be extremely forgettable. Like, honestly, off the top of my head right now, I cannot remember her character's name. I can't. I just know like she's the mom character. And she does a good job with what she's given. Rosario Dawson really elevates this character. And if it wasn't her and it was somebody else who wasn't as talented, it would have kind of ended up being maybe a nothing character. The kid in this, Chase Dillon, sometimes it's hit or miss with child actors, but he did a good job. Like, I didn't see just like a child actor amongst all of the other adults. I just saw his character, and that's really high praise. He did a good job, and he was honestly really funny, and he had some good dramatic moments. I'm not typically the biggest fan of Tiffany Haddish. Her humor's really hit or miss with me, and she was okay in this. I think some of her jokes worked, and some of them didn't, but I overall liked her character. And of course, Danny DeVito is Danny DeVito. He's good, he's funny, he's exactly what you would expect. If you remember my Everything Everywhere All at Once review, you know I love Jamie Lee Curtis. She's awesome, but unfortunately she really wasn't given much to do other than kind of give exposition, and so that's a little unfortunate. Jared Leto was actually pretty good as the main villain of this, the Hatbox Ghost. He was a fun and menacing villain. However, I will say that there's not really a reason for Jared Leto to be cast as the Hatbox Ghost, because anytime you see him, other than like maybe 2 pictures, he's completely CGI, and his voice is so heavily modulated, you couldn't tell that that was Jared Leto just by the voice. So easily could have just had a voice actor to do this, kind of just had him to be another name you could put on the poster, but I will say he does do a good job. Overall, I did enjoy Haunted Mansion. It's not top tier Disney movie, top tier summer blockbuster, which can I say it's weird that both of the release dates for this, because it was originally supposed to come out in November, and it switched place with the Marvels, and it came out at the end of July. Can I just say that both of those time frames are really weird? It's an absolute missed opportunity not to release this in October. However, I did have a good time at the theater, other than the people in my row down a little bit further and down toward the front of the theater were just being extremely disruptive, and it was extremely annoying. So if you want to hear me rant on that, I have a video talking about how frustrating movie theaters can be, especially recently, so go check that out. This film is a good intro to kids for horror movies or for creepy movies. Like, if anybody remembers like the Goosebumps TV show back when like I was a kid, this kind of gives me a little bit of the same vibe. It has some solid scares and some solid laughs. You still have the Disney charm. The script isn't the best. It's bloated. It's a little bit too long, but there still is some really good moments. And of course, Lakeith Stanfield is amazing. He carries this movie. He is the MVP. If you were on the fence, I don't know if I can necessarily recommend that you go see it, because I don't know how it's going to hit you. But I still had a good time. It was a solid movie. I got to give it like a 3 out of 5. So that's it. That's my review for Haunted Mansion. Let me know in the comment section down below. Have you seen Haunted Mansion? What did you think of it? I would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon. I really appreciate you so much for watching. We are getting really close to 100 subscribers, and that's really exciting. So like I said, if you haven't done so, please consider subscribing. That would be so awesome. It would mean a lot to me. And don't forget to follow me on social media, pretty much everywhere, at CinemaSeth. And I'll see you next time.